So I'm a teacher. I work with 5 to 6 year olds, and I think that comic books. I mean, recently our schools in the UK have closed. They haven't been open since Christmas, except for the children of key workers and vulnerable children. They're the only children still coming into school. And to sort of make that experience for them as fun as possible, us, the year one team, we ran a superhero week. So on Monday, the children came in costume. I went in dressed up as Supergirl, and it was just so much fun. And when you have like a collection of all ages books, such as Tiny Titans, Wrapped Up, Mini Marvels, the children absolutely love comics. They love the pictures, the colourful artwork, and even if they're not, fully reading every single word that's in a speech balloon, I think the beauty of comics is that you can sort of tell your own story by reading across the panels, looking at the artwork. And I think that's what the children love to do. They love seeing, these colourful characters and making their own stories up. And then I just print out some blank comic book templates, and they are so creative. They absolutely love making their own comic books. So I think that my class, at least, they're finding comic books, as a way of accessing reading and writing.
Let's talk nerdy things like comic books and superheroes with some nerdy peeps, writers, cartoonists, and so much more. So stick around and have some fun with the lovely and adorable Evil Web.
This is Titular Characters, and I am your adorable host, Eva Webb. The first comic book Ellie Egleton ever read was Batman number 500, and since then, comics have been the heart of everything she does. After the successful debut of her first all-ages graphic novel, Power Punch Bootcamp, she has continued to write independent comic book scripts and has worked with publisher Fair Sparks Books as an editor. She is also a casual contributor to the Valkyries. And I have it on pretty good authority that she's an adorable ball of positivity and light. You're going to love this interview. Anyway, Ellie, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It is a pleasure to be here today.
Likewise. I just wanted to tell you that I had a chance to look at the Power Punch Bootcamp book, and it is just gorgeous, and it is charming, and everything about it is beautiful. Would you mind telling people what it's about?
Oh, thank you so much. So Power Punch Bootcamp is an all-ages adventure that brings together a group of superpowered children to a campsite ready to train with their powers. And in the first book, one of the campers is absolutely desperate not to become a superhero, but a villain. He wants to grow up, and he wants to take over the world. So the book's really about the other children trying to show him, the path of light, and to persuade him not to go forward with his plans for world domination.
It's a kid after my own heart. I would have done the same thing if I were a superhero kid. I love the art style and just the presentation of the whole thing. What inspired it?
Thank you. So I actually wrote the first draft of Power Punch Bootcamp when I was still at high school. So I was probably about 15. And truly what inspired it is just having grown up reading comic books. And I've always been such a fan of superheroes, and I thought, I really want to have a go creating my own. So I remember sort of sitting in my science lessons, my maths lessons. I know I should have been paying attention, but I was using my notebooks to sort of plot and plan a script and design the characters. And then when I went to college, I got in touch with a comic book artist. The first comic book artist I sort of had in mind to bring the project to life was Kurt Wood. And Kurt Wood agreed. He signed up to the project, and he did a good solid 16 pages. Until then, issues with sort of family meant he had to drop out of the project. But luckily for me, he then introduced me to Alejandro Rosado, who also lives in Chicago, also has worked for Comics. And since then, me and Ali have, it's just been such a perfect match. We've made 2 books now, the first Power Punch, and then a second Power Punch that sees my crew team up with his crew. It's been really good fun.
Where did your journey with comics start? How did you get there?
So that's a great question. Batman issue 500 was read to me when I was a baby. So my dad has been collecting comic books since the 70s. Obviously, growing up in England, we didn't get all of the titles. So he was mostly a Marvel man. And then I was born in 1995. And in order to sort of read his pull list and look after me, he would read me the stories at bedtime. So Batman issue 500 was the first comic ever read to me. And then since then, I have just grown up on comic books. And my tastes really do vary now, from DC and Batman to reading Marvel, independents. I'm just such a huge fan and collector, and it has really been inspired by my dad.
I bet he's super proud, That is just awesome.
Thank you. No, I mean, we have such good fun together. I mean, it really has bonded us, and we're so close. And one thing that we're really enjoying at the moment is actually cataloguing the collection. So, as I said, he's been collecting since the 70s now. We probably have about 200 comic boxes, plus 10 CGC boxes. And since January, so my New Year sort of resolution was to get this collection catalogued. And I've done about 2,000 comics now. We've graded, we've logged, and it's just been such good fun.
Yeah, I saw on your Twitter feed you were sharing pictures of just some really just seminal books, like the Dark Phoenix Saga, which you have GCC graded, and just others. And it's really just a lot of fun to watch you do that.
Oh, thank you. No, that's right. So when I was really little, one of the major storylines I really got into was the Dark Phoenix Saga. Can you remember the 90s X-Men cartoon? They interpreted the Dark Phoenix Saga, and I remember going to our local supermarket and buying the actual video. And then we took the video home. I watched it. I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, and I just became obsessed with Jean Grey. And then my dad got me the Marvel Legends Phoenix action figure. So my love for the character just grew and grew. And I've probably read most, X-Men comics that she is in. I'm just such a big Jean Grey fan. And so on Twitter, I do like to post the occasional gem that I find in the collection, such as those CGCs.
Okay, just to sort of date myself and sort of just... Okay, so I tell people I'm 27, but I remember the Dark Phoenix Saga when it first came out, like on its first run. And
amazing.
Yeah, I was really, really little. My dad was sort of the same way. I was raised with Steve Ditko's Spider-Man, the reprints that came out in like the early 1980s. That was the first thing I ever read. And
Amazing.
yeah, I mean, it's really just amazing, when you're barely out of the crib and your parents start reading you this stuff, and it's formative, I think.
It is. I think we've been blessed with awesome parents. I remember meeting Chris Claremont at a convention in Chicago, C2E2, and I went to him. My dad read the Dark Phoenix saga and he cried. He was probably about 11, 12 when it came out. And then I read it years later and I also cried. And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry about that." And he told me a really cool story. The Phoenix costume was that made its debut in X-Men 101 was actually originally designed to be white. But because the pages of the book were so thin when they were printed, the panels and the adverts would show through Jean Grey's white costume. So they had to fill it in green just to sort of be able to print the book.
That's really interesting. I did not know that.
No, it's a cool story. It was. And he also told me at the time that he does see Jean Grey sort of as Cyclops' true love over Emma Frost, who he always designed to be a villain rather than an actual member of the X-Men. So I thought that was a really cool story as well.
Definitely. I love Emma Frost, though. I mean, especially like modern Emma Frost.
Absolutely. I love the upcoming Women of Marvel variant by Jen Bartle, where I think she's released She-Hulk, Emma Frost, Patsy, and Silk in really cool, fashionable outfits. I'm really looking forward to picking up all four of those Women of Marvel variants.
So, what are you reading right now?
So, right now I've gone back. I'm currently reading the Uncanny X-Men Volume 1 Omnibus. But alongside that, I'm also getting up to date on Miles Morales' Spider-Man, which I'm really enjoying. A really good book. I really enjoyed the recent PlayStation game, so that's inspired me to read that comic. And also in my reading pile, I have the new Daredevil series. And I'm really looking forward to getting to issue 25, where Elektra's about to take over. So I'm in a big Marvel mood at the moment.
Okay, so you're in a totally different universe than I am as far as geography. Are there any good comics that are like only available in the UK?
So that's a great question. Here in the UK, we have a massive publisher, 2000 AD. Their catalogue has been bought by a game studio called Rebellion. And that publisher publishes like Judge Dredd, the 2000 AD magazine. And I know that they are sort of worldwide now, but they are the comic books that we can go and get at our local shops and our newsagents. Otherwise, we have to go to like a specific comic book store or order all the American titles online. I think here in the UK, I mean, we're so lucky that we do have some amazing comic book creators living here, like Mark Miller, who he is the guy. He's so good at recommending reads from the Rebellion catalogue. I remember tweeting with him the other day, and he was sort of pointing to me towards these UK comic book gems.
Yeah, you've got Mark Millar, you've got Neil Gaiman, who, in my opinion, I think is, if not the greatest English language author, damn close. And then you've got Alan Moore and all kinds of just amazing people that have come from there.
Absolutely, and I think we're so lucky now. Although obviously the coronavirus has stopped us meeting at like comic conventions and events, I think we're so lucky that these creators have such a strong presence online, because it still feels like we're very much part of the comic book community, which at the end of the day I actually think is quite small. Like, I know there are so many creators and so many fans, but I've been sort of blessed with nothing but good experiences in the comic book world. And I just feel like it can be such a sort of supportive community that I really enjoy being a part of.
It's just amazing. I was just talking about this with Blake McCarthy. There are creators large and small all over the world. And the great thing about the internet is everybody talks to everybody else. You can talk to these huge creators like, Eric Larson and Gail Simone and, Kurt Busiek and people like that. And they will talk back to you and they will have conversations.
No, I totally agree with you. And it's nice because, I mean, if you are sort of a fan of superhero comics, I mean, this is what the catalogue sort of teaches us as fans, to sort of be good and to help each other. And it feels like the comic book community really does have that as its core value. And you're right, it's so funny. Just on Twitter this morning, I was tweeting about I'm trying to find a spinner rack for my CGC collection, and Sean Phillips ended up tweeting me back. And no, it's great. It's just amazing who you can end up talking to online.
So back to your project. Is Power Punch Bootcamp the only thing you've worked on? Tell me about everything.
Okay, so when I was a teenager, my sister Lily and I set up a fanzine. And this fanzine was the first ever project I worked on that was to do with comics. And it was called First Class Comic Review. It was called that because at the time I was such a big fan of the X-Men First Class books written by Jeff Parker. And so we published about 8 issues of this fanzine. But it was just so much fun. We reviewed comics, but the thing we enjoyed the most was talking to different comic book creators. So through our work on the fanzine, we became quite close to writer Todd DeZargo, who writes the Pahapanauts and Telos. And when we went to New York City, he took us to a restaurant called the Jekyll and Hyde Club, and we got to sit, we got to talk about comics. It was just a blast. We also became friends with Chris Caruso, who wrote and drew the Mini Marvel comics, which we used to love. And he drew a cover for us. We got to interview him. And another great interview was when we got to interview Stan Lee at London Super Comic Con in 2012. I'll never forget when we sort of stepped onto that convention floor and suddenly this massive crowd of fans gathered and Stan Lee was in the centre of it. So me and my sister, sort of in awe, we sort of wandered after him. We bumped into his agent at POW Entertainment and we showed him the fanzine that we were making. And he said, "Do you want to interview Stan?" And all our dreams came true that day. We were like, yes, please. So he booked us in for 5 minutes the following day of the convention. And my sister and I, we came home. We sort of racked our brains all night. What questions do we want to ask him? The next day we went back and we had about 3 minutes of Stanley, and they were the best 3 minutes ever. So that was the first comic book project I've ever worked on. That was so much fun. Then after that, I worked on Power Punch Bootcamp, which, as I was explaining earlier, is my first all-ages graphic novel with art by Ali. And that was launched as a Kickstarter project. And we had about 80 backers. We raised £3,000 to print the graphic novel. And because of that graphic novel's success, we then published Power Punch Bootcamp versus the Elemental Factor, who, as I said, are Ali's sort of creator-owned characters. And they meet up and they have like a sports day event on the campsite. So that's just a really fun all-ages book. And we're currently working on our 3rd book in the trilogy, where sort of monsters are rising on the campsite. So it's going to be quite Halloweeny, a little bit spooky, but all good, all ages fun. Since then, I mean, I just try and dip into projects when I can. There was a small UK publisher called Fair Spark Books, and for a short time I was editing their range of self-published comic books, and that was my sort of first editorial experience. It was really good fun because I love the comic book making process. I love seeing, pages of art being inspired by the scripts. And so I edited a few books for them, like Ella Upgraded, Megatronic, MBR, which is a book about a sort of a big space bunny. And then I've recently been contributing to the Valkyries website. The Valkyries are a group of sort of geeky girls, geeky women who publish articles on comic books, on games. I've recently done a few interviews for them with other female creators, such as the Archie comics editor, Jamie L. Rotante, who has recently written a Betty and Veronica graphic novel, and also comic book editor Heather Antos, who I really like from her run on Gwenpool. So that's sort of what I've been up to in recent years.
Heather Antos is amazing. She just does, just all around.
Absolutely.
I haven't actually talked to her in person yet, but just sort of going on her Twitter feed, she seems to be just all talented and just sort of virtually all knowing in terms of geek culture. It's kind of intimidating.
No, she was so friendly and so fun to talk to. It was a really good interview that you can find and read on the Valkyries website. As soon as I sort of got the gig at Valkyrie, she was the first person that I wanted to ask for an interview, and I was so glad when she said yes.
When you're creating your comics or your editorial content or running interviews, what is your emotional center? Where do you draw from?
So, because I'm a full-time teacher, I teach 5 to 6 year olds, and so to find my zen, I sort of have to come home from work. I have to sort of, calm down from the day because it can get wild in the year 1 classroom. So much fun, but it can get crazy. And it's just finding like that peaceful place in my house where I can sit with my laptop. I like to sort of refocus by reading what's currently on my pull pile, and then that really does inspire me to create new content. When I start a new project, I always sort of do like a collage, like on Pinterest. So I sort of save images and text that inspires my characters, my story, and then I just take it from there. And as soon as an artist like Ali comes on board, I just feel like the project's really brought to life, because I can start to see my characters being sketched out. I can talk to someone who loves the project as much as I do. Ali and I try and Skype as much as we can. Of course, sometimes it can be a bit tricky because I'm here in London and he's in Chicago. So there's like a 5-hour time difference. But having that other person to discuss my projects with really does get me inspired and pushes me to focus as much energy as I can on the project.
Were there any big challenges that you experienced working on the Power Punch Bootcamp book?
So I think the biggest challenge was when, unfortunately, Kurt Wood first left the book for totally understandable reasons. But at that point, I was sort of only 16, 17, and it was sort of the end of the dream for me. I didn't think that I would be able to find another artist. I didn't even know how to start looking. So that's when, I got really lucky. I got in touch with Ali, and after reading the script, he signed straight onto the project. Since then, we decided to go down the Kickstarter route, just because, finding a publisher is so difficult. Obviously, there's a lot of sort of creative competition, but one thing that will hopefully help us in the future is that we have found an agent here in the UK called Nine Panels, who, again, before the coronavirus, was taking the book and the project around to different publishers. And we just hope that one day maybe we can see Power Punch Bootcamp sort of on the shelves of most comic book stores. Diamond here in the UK are carrying the title, but not in the USA. So that's sort of our next goal. We want our books to be, widely accessible, because we really think that, our audience, the children who pick up the books, enjoy it. They love the story, they love the characters. So we just want to try and get the book into as many hands as possible now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I'm sure it'll work out because just the book is so incredibly charming and novel. Just the whole premise of it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm so lucky to be working with Ali. He's had experience working with Comics. He contributed to Puerto Rico Strong, which was a Lion Forge project, which won an Eisner Award. So I feel like, my partner's extremely talented. And with me being in the UK and him being in the USA, hopefully we're building up, those sort of contacts, that sort of network that maybe one day we can use to get the book out there.
So a question I like to ask everybody is, have you had any ideas on how to get your comic into more hands, how to attract new readers?
So what Ali and I love to do is we do love to attend our local comic book shops. So here in London, we have an event every June, July called Small Press Day. And this day is it's a bit like Free Comic Book Day. It's a celebration of indie comics. So I went a couple of summers ago now, before the virus. I went to Orbital Comics, and that was such a fun way to communicate with readers because I was literally able to give the book, directly to people to talk about the book. And I've also in recent years been to Chicago to join Ali at C2E2, and we just love to promote the book in fun ways. We love to give out stickers, bookmarks. He makes these awesome colouring sheets. And we put a lot of that content, that downloadable content, on our Instagram and our online pages. Obviously, recently we've been in lockdown, so that has cut us off, from readers. But in order to stay in touch, we published online for free a short 10-page, Power Punch Bootcamp in lockdown story. And I think those kind of things that promote the book, they've just been so much fun to work on. And that's what we like to do. We like to show people how fun our characters can be.
I really love that. Just the perspective of coming in from the standpoint of this has to be fun. That is neat.
100%. I mean, the reason why I love comic books so much is because it has been such a fun part of my childhood. I've loved reading them. We're really lucky with the movies that we now get, the games we get to play. And it's sort of passing it on to the next generation of comic book readers. Like, we want Power Punch Bootcamp to be a title that little ones can pick up and think, hey, I can be a superhero, or, I really want to read more comic books, or one day, I want to be a writer, an artist. We want Power Punch Bootcamp to be that starting point in children's love for the medium.
Is it challenging to get kids to focus long enough to read a comic book?
So, so I'm a teacher. I work with 5 to 6 year olds, and I think that comic books, recently our schools in the UK have closed. They haven't been open since Christmas, except for the children of key workers and vulnerable children. They're the only children still coming into school. And to sort of make that experience for them as fun as possible, us, the year one team, we ran a superhero week. So on Monday, the children came in costume. I went in dressed up as Supergirl, and it was just so much fun. And when you have like a collection of all ages books, such as Tiny Titans, Wrapped Up, Mini Marvels, the children absolutely love comics. They love the pictures, the colourful artwork, and even if they're not, fully reading every single word that's in a speech balloon, I think the beauty of comics is that you can sort of tell your own story by reading across the panels, looking at the artwork. And I think that's what the children love to do. They love seeing, these colourful characters and making their own stories up. And then I just print out some blank comic book templates, and they are so creative. They absolutely love making their own comic books. So I think that my class, at least, they're finding comic books, as a way of accessing reading and writing.
That's amazing. So you're actually like turning kids into comic book creators. They're creating their own stuff.
Oh, I try.
So we are heading up on the fun part of the show, and I think you would have some really good answers here.
Okay.
Who is your inner superhero? What are your powers? What does that person do? What do they look like?
So I think right now my superpower is to have that good sense of humour. I think right now we are facing sort of quite challenging times, especially with the coronavirus. It seems to have stopped so many things that we love. And so when I go to work with the children, I just bring my sense of humour and an energy that lets them, be creative and to sort of forget that outside world a little bit. So that would be my superpower, I think, right now, a good sense of humour. And then what my superpower would look like. So when making Power Punch Bootcamp, one of the main characters is called Skylark. And, she's fully dressed in pink. And I really think that the artist sort of looked at me and said, yeah, we're going to draw you as this character. And so I think that's really how Skylark came to be. So just bright and colourful and good fun.
That is awesome. So not only are you like a comic book creator, but your character is based on you. That is neat.
I think without planning, like sort of subconsciously, I've sort of written Skylark as if, I were a superhero. If I was super, this is exactly what I'd want to be like.
So do you feel like you'd be like a conventional superhero? I'm guessing the answer to that is yes, as opposed to like a dark anti-hero or a villain.
I think I would have to be a conventional superhero. I think I've been so sold on the ideas that, superheroes, they save lives, they help each other, they cheer people up. Whereas, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of some anti-heroes, vigilantes, but I do think if it was me, I'd have to go down that really goody two-shoes path and follow all of your superhero rules.
What do you think your primary superhero rule would be?
Oh, probably it would be caring for others. I think right now that is really what I'm trying to do in my everyday life. I think, this week alone, this week's been a pretty tough week. My grandma's not very well. My in-laws have all tested positive for coronavirus. So it's just finding that way to sort of cheer up my family, my friends, to help them just get on with their daily lives. So yeah.
So we asked the audience this week if they had any questions for you. Did you get any responses to that?
Oh, I got a couple, not too many, but I got a couple. One of those questions was, what is my favorite, comic convention memory? And aside from sort of meeting Stan Lee in 2012, a few years ago, well, 2018, I flew to Chicago with my friend Sajata, and about after an 8-hour flight, I was at the airport. We were going through passport control, and a few sort of steps ahead of me, I thought I saw Mark Miller, and I was like, "Is that Mark? Can it be him?" And then we went through, baggage to pick up our suitcases. And there he was. Mark Miller was standing there, and we went over for a chat, and it was great. After an 8-hour flight, it was such a great way to kick off the start of Comic Con. And then the next day, we were on a sort of Mark Miller Q&A panel, and I was one of the guests who got invited onto the stage to try and answer some questions Mark was throwing at us. And then, at the end of it, he said, "We're going to take you all to lunch." And that was a blast, because it was not only, fun having lunch with Mark, but the people I met at that dinner, I'm still friends with today. We still talk on Twitter, on Facebook. So it's just such a fun way of meeting people with the same kind of interests. And it's just like, as I was saying earlier, the comic creators are just such nice people. Dan Slott is another one who he likes to come over to London quite a lot. So I've met Dan a few times now at Forbidden Planet, at London Super Comic Cons, and he's just so fun. He's so much fun to talk to, not only about, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, but also like New York, Broadway. It's just I love meeting comic creators so much.
So you've talked to a lot of comic book creators in the time you've been just sort of in the community. Who do you think your favorite person is so far that you've talked to?
That is honestly, that's such a tough one. I can't say that I have a favorite, because every single creator I've met, they've all been so inspiring, and they all genuinely believe in the dream that, if you practice writing, drawing, if you practice your craft and give it your time and your energy, that you can make it in comics. And that's the message that, I've got from every single creator. And it's really spurred me on to just keep creating and to try and find a time for it in the busy lives that we lead. So I think this is really like my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is to just write more comic books for all ages, for teens. It's just a dream, really.
So what does the future look like? What is coming next for Ellie Egleton?
So I think the plan for now is I've got to get through my children at school. I've got to get them through this really tough time where, they're doing all their learning at home. So we're going to get them through their year. And then after this school year, I really do want to, focus my energy on my writing. And I think together with Ali, we're going to put out the next Power Punch Bootcamp book, which we will probably run through Kickstarter, because we've ran 2 successful campaigns now. And then once we've got that trilogy collected, it is trying to find, a publisher, a home for these graphic novels that'll hopefully, help get it on the shelves of even more comic book stores. So I think that is the next step for me.
I should have asked this earlier, but I meant, but I totally skipped my mind. I'm sorry.
No worries.
How do you feel about digital in general. Are you a fan, or do you prefer paper?
So I am one of those classic comic book fans who prefer paper. Um, yeah, I do. I love reading paper copies of my comics. I have read digital, but that's mostly to have a sneak peek at whatever comics are coming in my comic book order, such as recently Tom King's Batman Catwoman. I just cannot wait for the postman to bring me my copy. So I do log on to digital and have a read there before my printed copy comes. But having said that, I totally understand, why some people go all digital, because, Dad and we've been running out of space for our collection for years now. And digital does seem to be a really convenient solution. And one way you can even carry your comic books on the go. But yeah, no, I am stuck reading physical copies. How about you?
It's something I've been. I used to be one of those hardcore paper fans. At the beginning of the digital era, and I'm a technologist, so I think that was kind of a weird position for me to take. But like at the beginning of the digital era, I was like, they'll never be able to do this digitally. I don't even know why they're trying. These skins look terrible, blah, blah, blah. So it grew on me though. And now today, I think I really prefer digital. I mean, there's the space factor that you mentioned. Like you can carry literally millions of comics around with you anywhere you go, and it's great. Oh my God. You can read just about anything on Comixology or Marvel or any of those. And that's a really nice thing to have. But what I like about it, and it totally caught me by surprise. It was a feature I never asked for or wanted, but it makes the whole experience, and that's the guided view. I really, really like it.
Is that when it takes you from sort of panel to panel?
Yeah, and the other thing it does, I have dyslexia, so sometimes like words don't always work right on paper for me. And I get things like voice bubbles and, or rather, oh, sorry, they're not voice bubbles, they're word balloons. A letterer corrected me on that the other day. So, yeah, so like the other thing it does is it sort of guides you through the correct order of the voice bubbles, and the screen really keeps my brain from getting tired like it would on paper. I really like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can see, I definitely can see the advantages of digital comics, such as what you've just said. And, in my classroom, I can't take in, my precious comics, not to 5-year-olds, they're going to wreck them. So sometimes I do put, a digital copy up on my interactive whiteboard just for them to flick through and have a read. And the children really do love it. They really do. One cool project that artist, Power Punch Bootcamp artist Ali has been working on during lockdown is putting a list of graphic novels together for his local schools in Chicago. And I really hope that, that project goes really well for him, and more comic books do sort of get introduced to the classroom.
That would be great. I would love to see that. So Ellie, I wanted to just thank you sincerely for visiting me on my my humble little podcast. You have been just so gracious and so much fun to talk to.
Thank you so much. I've really loved it. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, definitely. So where can people find you online?
So on Twitter, I am at Egleton, so Egleton. On Instagram, I'm at Power Punch Bootcamp, where you can find sort of lots of updates of our project and also some free downloadable content. And I also have a website, which is elliemakescomics.com, and that's where you can find out more about me, more about my work, and also read my portfolio.
And now, friendos, it is time for the credits. Titular Characters is a podcast about the things we love. It's produced and hosted by the adorable Eva Webb. That's me. Graphic design by Laxiva. Show logo by John Rochelle. Opening theme by Antonia Marquis. Dramatic music and closing theme by Speed Force Music. Editing by Jocelyn McPherson. Mixing and sound by Brogan Malloy. Want to get in on the Twitter fun? Just follow me at Eva is Adorable and wait for the next exciting question to drop. Do you feel like supporting the show? Are you the kind of person that expresses your love by giving money to adorable podcasters you meet on the internet? Of course you are. And now you can help us out with a quick donation at buymeacoffee.com/Eva is Adorable. Because I am. Every little bit helps. And that's all we got, babies. Join us next time for another exciting adventure in cyberspace. Love ya!